everyone, it's Miss Rossi. Today we're going to be finishing our printmaking activity from last week. What you'll be needing today is a pencil, we're going to need our pen, we're going to need our sketch. We're also going to need our other printmaking supplies from our folder. So this should be your styrofoam printing plate and your printmaking final papers. We're going to need our washable markers, and we're also going to need a paper towel and some water a little bit later on. I'm gonna put that to the side for now, along with these items, because the thing I'm going to need right now is our sketch and our styrofoam printing plate. So we're going to engrave our sketch onto our printing plate, color it in, and then print it onto our final papers today. Now what we're going to do to start is transfer our sketch onto our printing plate. So I'm going to line up my sketch paper right on top of my styrofoam plate. And if you want, you can take a little piece of tape and tape it down so it doesn't move, because you don't really want it to start shifting as we're tracing. But I'm just going to hold mine firmly on the table. I'm going to use my pen to do this, and I'm just going to trace right over the top of my sketch, right over those pencil lines. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to push a little bit harder than I normally would push when I'm drawing, because I want to press my sketch into my styrofoam. And as I'm doing this, I might end up ripping the paper a little bit, and that is okay. We don't need to worry about the sketch paper. We just want to worry about getting our picture that we drew onto our styrofoam. So once I trace that first section, I can lift this up, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see that on the camera very well. Let's see. There, you can kind of see it. It's a little bit indented where I just traced. So that cloud that I just traced is indented onto my styrofoam. So that's what we're looking for. You just need it indented enough for you to be able to see it on your styrofoam so that you can press it harder in, and we can trace over it again later to make it deeper. So we just want to go over and trace over all of our design. Again, pushing a little bit harder than we normally would. Now that I finished tracing my picture, I can remove my sketch, and on my printing plate, again, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but you can see my sketch is now slightly indented into my styrofoam. I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to trace right over the top of my sketch one more time, only on the printing plate. I'm doing this to make a deeper cut inside each of my sketch lines. So I want a nice deep groove in there to make my image. Now I'm pushing firm, so I'm going to hit almost like the other side. I don't want to push too hard where I'm cutting through my styrofoam, but I do want to make a nice deep mark inside my printing plate. So I'm going to go nice and slowly back and forth in each section to create a deeper cut in here as I am tracing. All right, now that I've traced it once and it's way easier for me to see, I'm actually going to go in a second time with my pen and go over the top of my entire picture once more. I'm going to try and hold my pen straight up and down as I am doing this. Again, I'm trying to make my lines nice and thick. I want them to be nice and deep without going all the way through, but we really need them to be deep enough that when we add our ink isn't going to go in those sections and they'll stay nice and white. So I'm just going back and forth over the top of all of my lines that I drew. So they are nice and dark with my pen, and they are nice, thick, deep grooves in my Styrofoam. All right, my printing plate is finished. I can put my sketch and my pen away for now. My grooves are nice and deep. I can see my design through the back, so I know they are deep enough. I didn't poke a hole all the way through onto the back, but they are nice and deep on there. It's okay if it's not perfect, because now we are going to start to add color. So I'm going to grab my washable markers. You need washable markers in order for this to work. And I am going to start to color in my picture. I'm going to make the ocean blue. My sun, I think I'm going to make yellow, but I'm going to add different colors in the background to make it like a pretty warm toned sunset. I'm going to take my markers and I'm just going to color right on top of my Styrofoam. I can go right over my lines and not worry about those because they are going to come out white on my picture. And I'm just going to fill everything in with a nice dark layer of marker. So I want to keep coloring back and forth over these sections so it is a nice and deep layer. You should really be able to see the color on there, because if there is not enough marker on there, it's not going to show up very well on your paper. Since we are coloring on Styrofoam, your Styrofoam isn't going to want to absorb the marker. So as I'm coloring, I'm making sure I'm not touching that area because the marker will wipe right off on my finger. So I'm just going to go in and color in my whole picture, making sure it's nice and dark and there are no white spaces left. You might want to go over each section a couple of times if you see it starting to kind of pool away and there is too much white space. We want it nice and dark. So looking at my printing plate, this center area where it's really dark blue is more of what we want than this kind of spotted area. I would want to color over that section again. But I'm going to mix some of my blues in here. So I'm going to take some dark blue on here and just fill in my picture. And you can color it in however you would like, as long as you add a good amount of marker on there. You can mix your colors together, so I am mixing my dark blue right over the top of my light blue sections, and those colors will blend nicely once I actually print this on my paper. So again, you can see my dark blue isn't fully colored in on here. It is kind of pulling away and there's a lot of white space, so I am going to keep coloring right over the top of that to add more ink on my printing plate. And now I am very carefully, push those markers to the side. I'm going to grab one of my final papers and I'm going to print my picture on my paper. Now the first thing I need to do before I print on my paper is I'm going to need to wet my paper a bit. So that's why we have our paper towel. You're going to want to go and get your paper towel nice and wet. You can wring it out in the sink so it's not fully dripping, but you want it to have a good amount of water on it. So I went to the sink, I wet my paper towel. It is pretty wet. Again, it's not dripping all over the place, but it is pretty wet. I am going to lay that out on my final paper, and I am going to press that water into my paper. You can use a sponge for this if you want to. We just want to get our paper nice and wet so it will take on our marker color. And you will be able to see the water kind of pooling on your paper, and that is what we want. We want a nice wet piece of paper today. A damp sponge will also work to do this. We just want to get our paper nice and wet. And you can probably see how shiny it is. So that's when we know it is ready to go. I'm going to take my printing plate, making sure once more that it is nicely colored in. There's not a lot of white space on there. And I am going to press it onto my paper to print it. So I'm going to hold it upside down. I'm going to line it up on my paper where I would like it, and once I drop it on the paper, I cannot move it. You can't slide it around or change it. So you want to make sure you're dropping it wherever you want it. I'm going to try and put it mostly in the center, and once I make contact with that paper, I am pressing it down and not sliding it around or moving it at all. I am just starting to press it onto my paper with my fingers. Now my fingers are a little wet, so I'm going to dry them off a bit. And I am going to start from the center and push my way out, pressing my image onto my paper. So I'm holding it down with one hand so it's not going to move and shift around. And I am just pushing from the center out. And I want to do this on all the sides so I know my picture is pressed in nicely all over. Once we lift it up, we won't be able to push it down again in the exact same spot. So you really have only one chance to do this. That's why we have some extra paper so we can try again. You can always do it on the back also once this one is dry. I'm just really pushing it on there, making sure it's not sliding or moving, always holding it down firmly with one hand and kind of massaging and pressing out with the other. All right, once you're done and you think it's ready, you can always peek on the edge and see if your color is sticking, and you can lift it right off of your paper and you will have your first print. Now you can see all of the marker that I had on my printing plate got pressed into my paper. I can take my wet paper towel from before and wipe off any marker that is left on there. Then I can take a dry paper towel, dry it off really, really well. And then I can color it again and print it one more time using different colors or the same colors on my other paper. But that is our print. Now the cool thing about this, like I said, is you can do it again. So once my printing plate is clean and it is dry, I can color on it again and print the same image in multiple different colors, or I can do the same set of colors again if I would like, but it's going to produce the same picture over and over again, which is the really cool thing about printmaking. And you can see wherever I drew my picture on my printing plate, those sections came up as those white lines, and everything else got to have the colors blending together. So it looks really cool. I'm really happy with that. Now, if yours is coming out a little spotty, like right there I have in the corner, it's a little bit spotty, that's okay. That's one of the cool things about printmaking is it's always going to look a little bit different with the way the color takes on your paper. But if it's too spotty, your paper might need more water on it next time. So you might want to wet it a little bit more before you do your printing plate. Or there might not have been enough ink on your printing plate, so you might want to make sure you color over it multiple times, and that color is super dark on there before you try and print it. But all those little spotty areas are also a really cool thing to have on your picture. But now that that is done, I'm going to let this dry. I can color this again and print it on my second paper doing the same method and using different colors too. So you can go ahead, color your picture again, print it on your second paper, and I can't wait to see how it turns out. Try your best, have fun, and get creative, and I'll see you next time. Bye!